Hello, everybody. Welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Thursday, January 13th, 2022, and happy playoffs, everybody. I'm your host, George Kerth, here along with the two best friends that anyone could ask for, Tyler Snyder. Tyler, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. Guys, I don't know if you knew this, but between the big three Tennessee teams, the Titans, the Predators, and the Memphis Grizzlies, they are undefeated in 2022. And as a fan of Tennessee sports, it is an awesome year to be a Tennessee fan. So I'm excited. I'm doing good.
Good to hear. And we also got Cody Roadcap with us as well. Cody, how those Milwaukee teams doing?
Wisconsin, George. Wisconsin.
Okay. I know
I
only said that because I know you're rooting for the Bucks in the NBA playoffs last year. It kind of threw me off.
Yeah, I was rooting for the Bucks last year in the playoffs. I mean, they're playing all right. The Packers are the main team, but I do have a question for Tyler. Can you name more than two players on the Memphis Grizzlies?
No, absolutely not. I know nothing about the Memphis Grizzlies at all. I'm not even going to pretend to. It's just cool for Tennessee sports in general. I am a big Predators fan and I'm a big Titans fan. And, the Tennessee sports teams have just been supporting each other a lot. That's why I got my hockey jersey on today. So even though I'm not a Grizzlies fan, I just wanted to give a shout out.
I appreciate it. Get a John Morant jersey. He is pretty freaking good, but that's basketball. George, I think you want to talk about football.
I do want to talk about football, but I first got to give a little reminder to the podcast audience out there. We are going down to our one show a week format for the NFL playoffs, so stick with us. We're still going to be around talking a lot of football, fantasy, and not, but we are going down to one show a week for now. Today on the show, it's busy. We're going to talk NFL news and notes like we always do. We're going to give our fantasy awards for the season, as well as predicting the NFL awards that we will be hearing about before the Super Bowl. We are going to give a Wildcard weekend preview and a little bit of a playoff prediction here from us. And we invite you all to join us on NFL Playoff Challenge, which we are going to talk about here as well. You can find more information on that and more on thecouchgms.com and on our social media channels. But, Cody, why don't you lead us off in NFL news?
Alrighty, so like George mentioned, the first news, it's not NFL related per se, but we're going to talk about the playoff challenge over on NFL.com. They're not a sponsor, but they have the best fantasy playoff, in my opinion, I think in the guys' opinion as well. You can either go over there and search the Couch GMs. It should pop up. The group's name is the Couch GMs Podcast, or we'll have a link below in either the podcast description or the YouTube description. And of course, there'll be a spot for you to sign up over on the couchgms.com too. So we'd love to have you get involved. If you win, maybe we'll bring you on the podcast so you can talk some smack straight to us. A lot of incentives, so make sure you're getting involved on that one.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Cody?
I'm excited to see it.
Yes. I'm excited to have somebody come on the show and talk smack when they beat us, actually. But why don't we move into some actual NFL news then? And of course, the biggest NFL news after the season is always Black Monday. Coaches getting fired after the end of the regular season. So if you remember, we'll talk about John Gruden and Urban Meyer. They were both fired earlier in the season. Joining them, Matt Nagy from the Chicago Bears, Mike Zimmer from the Vikings, Brian Flores, the shocker, from the Miami Dolphins, Joe Judge of the Giants, and Vic Fangio of the Broncos. I'm just going to start off with, which of these is the most desirable location, do you think, for a new head coach? We can include the Raiders and the Jaguars in that mix.
Can we include the Raiders? Before we do we think they're going to move on from Bisaccia after they made the playoffs? Or is that job now secure and there's not 7 openings, there are only 6? What do you guys think on that one?
I honestly think...
I stumped him.
I don't think the Raiders have an opening. I think he's done a good enough job. I mean, he's led the team back into a playoff berth. I think it would be a much different story if they would have ended up losing to the Chargers and missing the playoffs. But the way that team battled the whole game, I think that Versace is going to keep the job. I think he will be the Raiders head coach, maybe just on a 1 year, let's see how he does on a full season kind of deal. But I do think it's going to be his job next year.
The only reason I think that it wouldn't be his job, actually, is if he decides he doesn't want to be a head coach. I know he's an older coach. He's been around for a while. So if he decides that he doesn't want to be a head coach, wants to go back to being a coordinator, that would obviously make it an opening. But I agree with Tyler. I think he has done very well, and it might end up being his choice on if he wants to keep it or step out.
Yeah, I think it also will depend on who's still available. We mentioned that they're still in the playoffs, so you can't interview any of them. Uh, so, teams like the Jags and the Bears, they're already jumping on interviews. They're having interviews as we speak. If maybe one of the guys they want to target post the playoffs gets taken up, they have the security blanket in Bisaccia. But, maybe a guy like Brian Flores is still out there after their playoff run is over, and they want to bring a guy like that in. I could see them pivoting in that direction. But back to your original question on the most desirable location, I think the answer is either, and I don't, if it's the Bears or the Dolphins, but I think both ownership groups are kind of not great to work for. So I feel like they had the best rosters and, futures going forward. Now the Bears don't have a first round pick this year. The Dolphins, they have a first round pick, but they did trade one away to move up to get Jalen Waddle. So there is some foundations there, but their owners aren't the best spot. But I mean, you can say the same thing about the Giants too. I don't think there's like a home run fill in most desirable location, but if I had to pick one, it'd be the Dolphins and or the Bears.
I'm going to jump in and say, because there's no home run location, I'm going to go with the Broncos, because I honestly think the Broncos have a solid roster. They have good wide receivers. They have a solid tight end. They have a very good defense. They're a quarterback away, I think, from being a playoff team already. So, I mean, it's not going to be the greatest situation if you're going in there as a new head coach and trying to search for your franchise quarterback, especially in a draft that is not favorable for quarterbacks. But overall, the roster build, I think the Broncos actually have the strongest. And like you said, the Bears and the Dolphins ownership groups are a little bit sketchy. I think the Broncos have a little bit less of a question mark in the front office. So I'm going to go with them.
I mean, they're set to sell as well. So a lot of, ownership change-ups or hiccups that you can be on. But I do like the Broncos as well. You mentioned the quarterback. Be interesting if they're in, the questions we'll talk about all offseason. Is Aaron Rodgers done? Is Russell Wilson on a new team? Do you go get a guy like Nathaniel Hackett from Green Bay and try to trade for Jordan Love if they're going to keep Aaron Rodgers, a guy that he's worked with for the last 2 years, instead of taking one of these young quarterbacks? So definitely a lot of interesting things, but I think I cut off Tyler. What is your most desirable location?
Well, I would love to just take the easy teams because, it's the easy pick, but I am the hot takes guy. So I feel like I got to make a hot takes pick here. When you're taking over a new team, I think you got to look at the young studs that you get to take over. If you're taking over the Vikings, I mean, you're getting Dalvin Cook, you're getting Justin Jefferson. If you're taking over, man, I just blanked totally. But if you're taking over the Bears, you get a guy like Justin Fields. If you take over the Dolphins, you get a guy like Tua. But I think there's a more desirable location as a new head coach. Now, hear me out. I think it's the Giants. Here's why. I think the Broncos have a lot of good, strong pieces on their team. And it is a team that you would love to start on. But if you're coming into a new team as a new head coach, we've seen a lot of guys have 1 year and done on their team because they didn't splash right away. Do you really want to go into that division and have to face off against those elite contenders every year? Like, that's not really where I'd want to go. Right now, I think the NFC East, the Cowboys look strong, but I think that's still one of the more wide open divisions. And on that team, you got guys like Saquon Barkley. You got some strong defensive pieces. You have some young talent, and maybe Daniel Jones isn't your guy, but you're sliding in with the 5th overall pick coming into this draft. Whether you like the quarterbacks or not, it's still a chance to make a choice on your guy. I mean, I love Justin Fields, but if a new head coach goes to the Bears, what if Justin Fields isn't his guy? Or what if it's a head coach with a mindset that doesn't like a mobile quarterback offense? Well, then you're stuck with it. Like, you got to find a way to figure it out. Where if you coming into the Giants, you get the chance to mold that team the way that you like. So as a head coach coming in, I think that's the team that I'd want to go to because you have more flexibility to do what you want and get your pieces in there.
Man, I could have swore when you were going on that rant, you were going to say Jacksonville.
No.
Because Trevor Lawrence, I mean, I thought that was going to be your guy. Trevor Lawrence was going to be your guy.
No, I think Jacksonville has some fun pieces on that team that you could try to build around. But I think the franchise as a whole is kind of a joke right now. I mean, Look, their fans showed up to this last game in clown costumes to protest how much of a joke their own franchise has been. And I don't think Jacksonville is a place that anybody is going to want to go until they finally sell that franchise and relocate, because it's just right now it's just a dumpster fire. No matter who they have, I feel bad for Trevor Lawrence being stuck on that franchise. Can they get better? Can they have a chance of making a playoff run within the next few years? Sure, but right now it's just nothing but bad juju surrounding that team.
That's why I will say it every time we talk about the Jags. They just need to hire Byron Leftwich. Get a guy
They do.
that was a quarterback that was a part of some winning seasons, a name in Jacksonville people can get behind. He's been with Bruce Arians. He knows how to develop quarterbacks. He's an up-and-coming play caller. He'll be great for Trevor Lawrence. That is like the most home run hire I can think of without actually interviewing people. But I guess that's why I'm doing a podcast and not interviewing potential head coach candidates, because probably won't happen. And but I think that's enough coach talk for now. We'll see where guys end up, new places. But why don't we get into some fun segments and we talk about some fantasy awards.
Fantasy awards, and why don't we start it off with the biggest, a fantasy MVP for the season. So how we're going to do this, guys, we're going to name off our collective group of nominees, and then we will tell you our winner. So we've already picked our winner out of voting between the three of us. So fantasy MVP for the season, our nominees were Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp, Mark Andrews, and Josh Allen. So honestly, we did take one from each position there. All of them had fantastic seasons. But Cody, why don't you go ahead and announce where we went?
All right, the winner of the Couch GMs Fantasy Award for Fantasy MVP is, no surprise, Cooper Kupp. I think when you look at this guy, he was drafted behind a guy like Robert Woods on his own teams. No one expected him to come out and play like he did. He finished as a Triple Crown winner in receiving yards, receptions, and touchdowns. Yes, he wasn't in half-point PPR. He wasn't the highest scorer. That was still Josh Allen, but that's because the quarterbacks typically score more. But just based on value and the number between him and the next wide receiver is a pretty big gap, and I don't think there was any arguments among the three of us on Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, I had him in
be someone out there that says Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, absolutely. Jonathan Taylor makes a strong case, but I just think Cooper Kupp had a bigger impact. He was just the guy that Matt Stafford wanted to go to. And if you went into a Monday night game, because they had plenty of them, or Sunday night games, if you went into one of those night games with only Cooper Kupp left down by 30, you knew you still had a chance. And anybody who has that big of an impact, I feel like you got to give the award to. I mean, I know I had Cooper Kupp in a keeper league, and it's so sweet because my team was one of the worst coming into this season. I used a 5th round keeper on Cooper Kupp, and I had multiple teams say that was way too high. Why would you do that on Cooper Kupp? Not worth it. And he ended up just getting me to the fantasy championship in that league this year. So it's beautiful to see. Probably going to keep him again. Love me some Cooper Kupp, and I love to see him break out because I think he deserves it.
Totally agree there. And we're going to see if Cooper Kupp can get another award here, because we're going to talk fantasy playoff MVP. So this is talking guys who helped carry you in the final 3 weeks of the season. So there might be some smaller names in here, like an Amon-Ra St. Brown. We got Joe Burrow on our list, Hunter Renfrow, Cooper Kupp, as we mentioned, Jamar Chase, and Rashad Penny. So Tyler, go ahead, announce this winner.
All right, and the award for the playoff MVP of the Couch GMs podcast goes to Jamar Chase, wide receiver for the Bengals.
I feel like this one was a little bit more controversial because Jamar Chase did have a really rough week 15, but as Tyler can attest to, he played fantasy championships only against Jamar Chase teams and lost because of it. So that fantasy championship 50 burger was just too much to pass up.
Yeah, I mean, you got to take the whole playoffs into effect, but at the same time, if you're putting up 50 in the fantasy championship, it's hard to look anywhere else. Because like you said, George, if you were able to make it to the fantasy championships with Jamar Chase, you most likely won. Now, if you still lost, even having Jamar Chase in the championship, I'm really sorry to you. That's insane, and I'm sorry. But as a guy who only faced Jamar Chase teams, it was a crusher. You can't overlook those kinds of points in a championship game. It's just like if a wide receiver goes into the Super Bowl and despite having not the greatest playoffs in the Super Bowl, he has 10 catches for 250 yards and 4 touchdowns. Yeah, that guy's got my vote for playoff MVP because the game that really matters is the championship.
Yes, and I mean his worst game was a 0.8 point performance in week 15. That's obviously a round where a lot of people that had him might have had buys. So there's a chance that that never even hurt you. He had 16 and a half PPR in week 16 and then the 50. So if you just got through that first week, he definitely didn't hurt you in the second week and then won you a championship. So that's why I'm with it too. But there's definitely a lot of other good candidates. Like I'm sure Cody's going to talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown right here. So I just let you do that.
Absolutely. I was going to say he was the runner-up on the group. I do want to give him a quick shout-out, a surprise addition. He had 19 and a half points, half-point PPR, scoring formats week 15, 21 and a half points in week 16, and 31.4 points in the championship game. So not only was he putting up big numbers, but he was consistent the whole way out. But he just lost out on the edge because of, Jamar Chase had a decent week 16 and a huge week 17 to solidify a lot of championships for people. So a close race there and that one. And I think the next category is biggest draft steal, which I'll give back to George to go through. And I think this is another close debate.
Yes, this is another good one. And I guess we can't be shocked because the man of the year, Cooper Kupp, is the first nominee in biggest draft steal. We also got Deebo Samuel, Mark Andrews, James Conner, Leonard Fournette, who became regular season Lenny this year, and Jalen Waddle. Cody, why don't you announce this winner?
All right. And again, another back and forth debate. But the winner of this is wide receiver Deebo Samuel. Now, some of you are probably like, I can't believe you're not saying Cooper Kupp, but Deebo Samuel was actually drafted after Cooper Kupp. His ADP was 88. He was the 35th wide receiver taken. He was taken behind guys like Brandon Ayuk, who we thought would be better on his own team. And he ended up finishing near the top. He got running back. He was running touchdowns. He was receiving touchdowns. He was an all-around gadget guy. Literally helped propel the 49ers to the playoffs in the real football and definitely carried your team in fantasy football. So Deebo Samuel, in terms of overall value all season long, was the biggest draft steal according to the Couch GMs.
Yeah, and it might not be the same for you guys, but I would say that my runner-up, or at least my honorable mention for the award, would have to be regular season Lenny for draft steal, because especially if you took a strategy like Cody did this year in our league of record and you drafted no running backs at all, getting those guys at the end of the draft that end up being solid for you is huge. Now, Fournette didn't really play at the end of the season because he did get hurt, and he wasn't a end-all, be-all, like blow you out of the water running back, but he was a consistent guy you could have played every single week, and his ADP was so low. You're getting him at the end of drafts. I know on my team in the league of record, I took Leonard Fournette, and I think he was my 4th or 5th running back. He was borderline one of the first people I was going to cut if someone else came available, and yet he ended up being a solid every week starter. So honorable mention to playoff Lenny, but you can't underwrite the best running back in the league of Deebo Samuel.
Tyler is going to beat the Deebo Samuel as a running back drum until they finally change it on some of these sites. But definitely congrats to Deebo Samuel there. And I agree with you that Leonard Fournette was my runner-up. But we can move on to a category that Cooper Kupp is not in this time. But that's because it's biggest bust of the season. So our nominees for biggest bust are Mike Davis, I feel attacked. Allen Robinson. Brandon Ayuk, I still feel attacked. Myles Gaskin. And Antonio Gibson. Tyler, why don't you announce our winner of biggest bust?
I also want to throw an honorable mention out here to Christian McCaffrey, another first overall pick that didn't pan out. But biggest bust award for the Couch GMs podcast goes to Allen Robinson, wide receiver for the Bears. His ADP was 31st. He was ranked as wide receiver 11. And this is my I feel attacked guy because I went hard for him in the preseason, saying that He hasn't had a good quarterback his entire career, and now he has Justin Fields. It might be the best quarterback he's ever played with. He is going to break out. He's going to be the guy. And my other boy, Darnell Mooney, stole all the points. So, Allen Robinson, biggest fantasy bust this year.
I mean, when I first looked at this list when we had our nominees together, I thought the slam dunk for me was going to be Brandon Ayuk. But I think a lot of us forgot about Allen Robinson because he was so bad that we jumped off the bandwagon, as opposed to a Brandon Ayuk who teased us throughout the season and stayed relevant and just made us remember how much of an annoyance he was. So, like, the fact that Allen Robinson was so bad that we forgot he was drafted at 31st in ADP is ridiculous.
Yeah, he finished in half point PPR scoring as wide receiver 86 on the season. DeAndre Carter of the Washington football team finished 85.
Oh
And
my gosh.
Nico Collins of the Houston Texans finished 87. So that's the area we're talking about. I mean, there is some other guys, some bigger names like a Jerry Jeudy and Julio Jones and T.Y. Hilton who finished lower than him, but they also played in a lot less games than Allen Robinson did. Now, he was injured, but he still played in 12 games, so he fit the criteria. Myles Gaskin just hurts. He wasn't the worst. But a guy I had a lot of faith in going into the season. Just that whole Dolphins offense as a whole, I feel like outside of Jalen Waddle, the surprise, Mike Gesicki had a down year. Myles Gaskin had a down year. Devontae Parker couldn't stay healthy. I feel like as an offense as a whole, that was a tough one to swallow.
Definitely. And if you guys don't have anything to add on there, we can move on to our last category, biggest waiver addition. So we're going to go back to the first couple weeks of the season, think of some of these guys that we added and carried us. I mean, maybe not in all cases, but in most here. Our nominees are Elijah Mitchell, Cordarrelle Patterson, Sony Michel, Rashad Penny, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think we're back here to Cody. Cody, announce our biggest waiver addition of the year.
Well, there was some in this category that made sense if you only took in the second half of the season. There's one guy on this list that deserves the award more than anyone else. That is running back / wide receiver, Cordarrelle Patterson. Biggest waiver addition, and he didn't even go drafted in most leagues. He was a guy that was available after week 1, ended up finishing the season at half-point PPR as running back number 9. So you got a top 10 running back that was not even a draft pick. That is called a steal.
Absolutely. And I still remember earlier in the season when I got to give it to George. He was the one that kept saying, like, guys, you got to look at Patterson. Guys, you got to look at Patterson. And I remember just being like, oh my God, George, shut up. I'm not going to pick up Patterson. It's Patterson. Like, I don't care about him at all. Mm-hmm. Until I finally saw that he had running back eligibility in NFL.com leagues. And I could not hit that add button any quicker because his value just skyrockets. Now, if you were in a league that he didn't have running back eligibility, I think he's still a steal. He's still a guy that you threw into your lineup every week, and he was still great. But if he did have that eligibility, man, it was massive because it's so hard to find good running backs. And, yeah, Patterson definitely deserves this award.
I mean, if we were looking at like a fantasy regular season MVP, he would have to probably be in that conversation just because of the fact that you added him off waivers. He was a top 10 running back. I understand that he had that struggle down the stretch, and that probably leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths and make it think like he didn't have as good of a season, but still to have a struggle of the last few weeks and have him finish in the top 10 in running backs just shows how strong he was, and definitely the best regular season addition. And I still think he's best for the year. I think that was a good pick by us.
Yeah, that one kind of hurts because I was like, no way. I was with Tyler. I was like, I'm not picking up Cordarrelle Patterson. He's too touchdown dependent. And I guess at the end, you can kind of say that we were right. In the playoffs, he was touchdown dependent. I mean, he still had he only had 153 rushing attempts on the season. That's not a lot for a starting running back, but he also had he was like, I think number 4 in running back receptions, I believe is the number. So he was involved heavily in that one, but he had 11 touchdowns on the season. That's where he got most of his points. And every week it'd be like 10 touches, 2 touchdowns. I'm like, he can't replicate it. The next week, 10 touches, 2 touchdowns. Like, okay, finally. And eventually he did. He helped me get into the playoffs in a league that I started out pretty bad in. So shout out to Cordero Patterson and congrats to everyone that picked him up.
And that, I think, wraps up our fantasy football awards for this season. But guys, why don't we jump into our next segment then and talk some NFL awards. So Cody generously has ordered this in what he believes is least exciting to most exciting. So on his awards list here, we have starting with Defensive Rookie of the Year. Now, how we're going to do this one, all three of us are going to name who we would nominate. We can do a little bit of a debate here. Tyler, why don't you start it off here? Who is your Defensive Rookie of the Year?
Yeah, I don't even think this is worth debating, to be honest, because I think it's very obvious. It's got to be Micah Parsons. He had the best season. I know I talked some smack earlier in the season saying that I felt like he was partially carried by having a good defense around him. I still think he has a good defense around him, but obviously this guy just balled out. He was a difference maker all season long on that defense, and Micah Parsons, I think, is a shoo-in to win the award. I don't even think it's close.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'll throw a shout out to Patrick Surtain II in Denver. You had a pretty good rookie season, but it was nowhere near what Micah Parsons did. And Micah Parsons is going to win Defensive Rookie of the Player of the Year. And for another award, for just make it up right now, in our one Dynasty League, for the guy that let me take Micah Parsons off of waivers in a full IDP. Thank you. Or off of your taxi squad. I appreciate it. So that could be like the biggest waiver addition in a full IDP awards as well.
I'm with you there also. I don't think there's any debate on Micah Parsons, but that's why we put that award first. Next on the list, Defensive Player of the Year. Another one we think is probably pretty obvious. Cody, who do you got?
TJ Watt. I think he deserved it last year over Aaron Donald. But he's going to win it this year. I know Aaron Donald will get his name mentioned in this again, but TJ Watt had a dominant season. He missed some weeks, tied the all-time record for sacks. Don't tell me that he had an extra game, because he didn't. He missed multiple games, I believe. He's actually played less. I think he only played in 15, still had 22 and a half sacks. Congrats to TJ Watt.
I'm with you. I agree on TJ Watt, and the fact that you're getting, is that approaching a sack and a half a game? On average,
Dude, I'm not trying to do math.
I don't know. But whatever it is, like, that's impressive. That's a difference maker every single time he touches the field. I think he deserves it too.
Yep, 1.5 sacks a game over 15 games at 22 and a half. Good math in your head, my friend.
Thanks. I'm impressed. I feel like Tyler's still trying to use the calculator over there to figure out if it is a sack and a half a game, but he's just distracted about something else.
I'm doing some research over here. That's all I'm doing. I'm sorry. It's not. I 100% agree with TJ Watt. Part of the reason I kept doing my research is because, again, it was another one of those shoo-ins. I never like saying Defensive Player of the Year and Watt in the same sentence, but at least it's TJ, so I like it a lot more. I'm okay with it this year.
All right, sounds good. I'll lead us off on Offensive Rookie of the Year, and my pick for Offensive Rookie of the Year is Jamar Chase. So I really think it's a two-man race between Jamar Chase and Mac Jones. We might actually get somebody in this group to say Mac Jones. I don't know yet. I haven't heard your guys' picks yet, but I think that last week really put Jamar Chase over the edge, and I mentioned how ridiculous it was, where it was like, Mac Jones just led his team to a 50-burger, but Jamar Chase scored 3 touchdowns and all of a sudden took over the lead. I think that was enough to put him over the edge for me, too.
See, if I'm ranking this, I feel like Mac Jones gets a lot more attention because of the fact that there was, I guess you could say 6 rookie quarterbacks this year, and everybody expected the other guys to be the best ones, and Mac Jones really turned out to be the only one that was even good. Like, Davis Mills performed better than some of the other guys that we were expecting to have big years, but Mac Jones, I don't think, had that impressive of a rookie season as a whole. I just think as compared to what we expected out of him and what we expected out of the other rookie quarterbacks, it makes him look a lot better. If Mac Jones would have commanded his team a little bit more, and you could say that he kind of put the team on his back and won games and got the Patriots, who no one expected to make the playoffs, in the playoffs, I feel like that would have been a lot more impressive. But I do think that game was dominated by the run game. There were some games where they only went with the run game, and Mac Jones just threw basically when they got to the red zone. So I don't think it's, and the defense was another big part of that team winning as much as they did. So that's why I got to go with Jamar Chase. but I will say honorable mention to Mac Jones.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm going to finish up is to I'm gonna say Jamar Chase. I know I've been high on Jamar Chase all year. He was my favorite guy coming out. I think Mac Jones. I think what you said is a good point. He he played well. He got the Patriots to the playoffs, but they relied on the run game. They relied on the defense. He had 22 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 3,800 yards. It wasn't a blow me away season. You could argue if Mac Jones was on the Jags and Trevor Lawrence was on the Patriots, who would have a better season. Obviously, we can't see what that would happen because they're on the teams that got drafted by him. But Jamar Chase at the end, like incredible numbers. I think he finished number 2 in receiving yards. Maybe if not, it's very close between Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Devontae Adams for number 2 in receiving yards. So I might have the order after week 18 a little backwards, but he's still in the top 5 for that. Came in. We talked about the Bengals. Everyone did not think the Bengals were going to be in the playoffs. Obviously, Joe Burrow was a big reason of why they're there, but he was throwing to his guy, Jamar Chase. Seems crazy that we were talking about this guy with drop issues at the beginning of the season. Oh my gosh, Jamar Chase can't catch anything. He quickly shut those rumors up. But the one name outside of Mac Jones I do think should get at least mentioned, and that is because he did break the rookie reception record this year. That is Jalen Waddle. He's kind of like the forgotten wide receiver because how well Jamar Chase has played. But Jalen Waddle was a guy that, people didn't expect much out of being in Miami. But he caught a lot of balls, had a lot of receptions, became a go-to target for Tua. But I don't think his season was not as good as Jamar Chase. And so for that, Jamar Chase is my pick for Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually a really good year for all 3 of those top wide receivers because you had Jamar Chase, obviously we're talking about for this. Jalen Waddle broke the rookie receptions record, and Devontae Smith broke rookie records for Eagles wide receivers. So it's amazing that you actually saw 3 wide receivers go in that top 12, and all 3 of them actually performed pretty well. But we can move on now to Offensive Player of the Year, and I'll let Tyler start this one off. He has a smirk. I want to know what he's got to say here.
Because I feel like we want to look at this in one direction and it's going to feel obvious and everyone's going to be like, oh, it's got to be Cooper Kupp, right? But Hot Take Scott doesn't go obvious. We got to go a little bit different. I think that there's one person that truly deserves the Offensive Player of the Year, and it's, to me, Deebo Samuel. And hear me out. I think Deebo Samuel not only performed as a wide receiver this season, but he also performed as a running back. The 49ers started this season with actually pretty good odds to make the playoffs, and yet they really disappointed. They fell apart early. They couldn't figure out who their quarterback was. They couldn't figure out who their running back was. We didn't know who was going to be starting at running back for him. It ended up being Deebo, and we didn't expect that. And when they did that, Deebo started carrying this team. He was getting all the rushing yards with all the receiving yards. And when he started doing that, it opened up the field. We started seeing other receivers start breaking out on that team because everyone was so focused on Deebo. And even with all eyes on Samuel, he still performed super well. And he ended up carrying his team to the playoffs and getting that playoff berth at the very end of the season. And I think that what he has done this season is so impressive. And because of the fact that he did it by playing 2 positions and leading a team on a comeback, I got to give it to Deebo over Cooper Kupp. I think Cooper Kupp had one hell of a season, don't get me wrong, but everybody expected the Rams to be good this year, and they still were. Nobody expected the 49ers to come back once they were down early, so I got to give it to Deebo.
That's not a bad pick at all. I was not when you said hot take, that's where I started to go, but he wasn't any of the guys I was debating between. But if you look in terms of total yards because of, rushing and receiving, because he did do some of that, he had 1,400 receiving yards and he had 360 rushing yards. So that's at 1,700 yards. Don't get me wrong, Cooper Kupp had 1,947 yards receiving in those 18 games. Now, granted, he played in all 17 of those. Deebo Samuel did miss a game, so you could argue would he had gotten an extra 150, 200 yards to make it even closer in the extra game. So I do like the surprise for Deebo Samuel. I think the guy that's going to win it, and I think also before I say this, you have to remember that these awards have been voted on now. Like they're not going to be announced before the Super Bowl or the day before the Super Bowl, but they're voted on. the playoffs do not take into account on any of these stats. So if Deebo Samuel or Cooper Kupp carries their team in the playoffs, like that doesn't factor into these actual NFL awards they've already been voted on. And I'm going to go with the guy that, you could argue because of how the season ended, took him out of consideration. But I am going to talk about Jonathan Taylor.
Yep.
Now,
Yep.
I understand. I don't think I'd vote him for MVP, but for Offensive Player of the Year, he did have over 2,000 total yards. He had 20 touchdowns. He was tied for the most in that. He was the Colts offense. I believe they were 8-1 or something. Like, they only lost one game when he didn't rush over 100 yards. Like, that's how important he was to their offense. So he was valuable in that sense. He put up a lot of points. I can understand, the last couple weeks were rough, especially the game against Jacksonville. I don't understand how they went the whole first quarter and he had like 3 touches. I was like, he literally got you here, and you're not even using Jonathan Taylor against Jacksonville. I know you got down quick, but still, don't use your best player. Didn't make any sense to me in that game. But Jonathan Taylor, I think he's going to squeak out a close not unanimous, but a close Offensive Player of the Year over a guy like Cooper Kupp, who I think is just as deserving.
I love the argument you made for Deebo Samuel as well. I think he is definitely a dark horse, but I just don't think he's going to get the love that he deserves. I was going to do exactly what Cody was going to do and say it's going to be Jonathan Taylor because there's so much more MVP buzz around Jonathan Taylor than there was around a Cooper Kupp. But if you already did it, I'll take Cooper Kupp. I'm not complaining. I don't even think I have to add much because you guys have already talked him up and he had a fantastic season. But it's that honestly, I think it's going to be a toss-up award between Taylor and Kupp, and Samuel deserves a little bit more love. But I just don't think he's going to get the love.
I think it changes dramatically if he got 15 more receiving yards and he broke Calvin Johnson's record. Like, if people could be like, he's the all-time leading receiver in a single season. I understand there's an extra game. You can debate that if you want, but I feel like if there was something like that to like people to look back on, because you got to remember these are like Associated Press people, and we can argue if they should be the ones voting for, because they're just people that watch the game. Some people make their decisions before the season based on if they like the guy or not. So these awards, unfortunately, after some of the drama that has come up around them the past couple of years, is like turning into Pro Bowl awards. It's more of a popularity contest than what we actually see on the field, which I think hurts a guy like Deebo Samuel, but I do like that pick as well. But a lot of talking about. The next one, I think there's just as much debate on, and that is Coach of the Year. And there's a lot of good candidates in this one. I think, you have the big 3 at the top that are the betting favorites, and Matt LaFleur, Mike Vrabel, Jonathan Taylor. I think Bisaccia.
Taylor.
Wow. Whatever. Close enough.
No one's getting his name right. It makes me think that no one's going to vote for it because you said Jonathan Taylor. Earlier, Tyler said Zach Stacy to me. I'm like, where is this coming from?
Like,
well, that's because but I think even like a guy like Bisaccia deserves at least in the conversation for how, that team, the John Gruden scandal, the unfortunate Henry Ruggs accident, like that is a lot of adversity to turn your team around than to get them in the playoffs. So he should be up there. But I do think at the end of the day, it'll come down to one of the big 3.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he definitely deserves some recognition. I think Zach Taylor definitely deserves some recognition, and Matt LaFleur had a great season. But this doesn't come with bias. I know, as hard as that is to believe, there's no bias here. I think Mike Vrabel has to win it, in my opinion. I think the season that he's had is so impressive. He was not in the top odds to make the playoffs. He was not in the top odds to make the Super Bowl. I know we're not there yet, but he is the number 1 seed. We weren't even favorites to win the division. So if you're just talking a team that is not expected to be good but performs great, I think he gets those votes. If you're talking overcomes adversity, there's no more adversity than losing your number 1 player on the team. Go back and look at every single interview once Derrick Henry went down. Everyone said, the Titans season is over. It's done. Like, they're done. They're not going to win anymore. And yet they also lost AJ Brown and Julio Jones and most of their offensive line and half their defense. And yet they still ended up as the number 1 seed in the AFC. They battled all season long. They beat some of the top teams in the league that everyone said they had no chance to beat. And it wasn't pretty. It's not like they went out there and they just performed so well. They were putting up 500 yards a game and they were just, unstoppable. No, it was every game they fought hard. It was ugly. It was aggressive. It was the most gritty wins you could imagine. And they grinded these out. And I think it's solely based on the fact that that team believed in their head coach. And when a head coach was able to get you those wins more than any player was, I think you got to give that award to that head coach. The Titans embodied Mike Vrabel's mentality this season. No one believed in them except for themselves, and they still came out and got the number 1 seed. I think Vrabel's season deserves that more than ever before.
A lot of great points. I am not arguing any of that because the Titans really did grind out a season that no one wants to give them credit for. But I'm going to give my coach of the year just to do a little bit of a counter argument to Zach Taylor, because I know almost nobody that thought the Bengals were going to be considered this much of a force in the AFC as they are right now. I get it. They do have some pieces, but when you consider that Joe Burrow is a second-year quarterback and he probably had not as good of a year as people made it think. Like, people said that he had an amazing year last year. It was all right. And then he got an ACL injury coming off of that. His number 1 wide receiver is a rookie. Their offensive line was an absolute joke last year, and they didn't really do all that much to improve it. And he turned that team into a team that we thought in the middle of the season could be the best team in the AFC for a stretch of 2 or 3 weeks. And they still ended up winning their division, getting a top seed in the AFC. I think that deserves some recognition there as well. I understand all the other counter arguments for the other 2, but I think, honestly, him and Vrabel should be the top 2, even though that's not how the betting odds go right now, because I think LaFleur had a much better hand dealt to him than the other 2.
Yeah, I was going to say, as a Packers fan, you're probably all expecting me to pick Matt LaFleur. And while I do think Matt LaFleur deserves Coach of the Year, he deserved it 2 years ago in 2019. The first year he took over, he took him to 13-3. He deserved it last year when they went back-to-back 13-3. Now, he did go 13-4 this year and has, the most wins in 3 seasons as any head coach. So if he wins it this year, this is not Coach of the Year in 2021. He has been the Coach of the Year, and he finally needs to get the award. That is how I'm viewing it if Matt LaFleur wins. Well, I think he is a worthy candidate. He wouldn't be my guy. I loved everything you said about Mike Vrabel. I think you made some good points about him. I think he is definitely worthy of it. Traditionally, though, the Coach of the Year award is a team that nobody thought was going to be good, which Mike Vrabel gets that once Derrick Henry got hurt. But we remember the Tennessee Titans were a playoff team the last 2 years under him. So they were still expected to be good. Some people thought the Colts were going to win the division, but they were still expected to be a wild card team, compete. Where the Bengals, even in like week 5, and I was at the Packers-Bengals game, the fans were chanting, "Get rid of Zach." Like, everyone was complaining after the missed field goal mishap game that, like, Zach Taylor needs to go. This team is not going anywhere with Zach Taylor. And he turned it around. He got everyone to buy in. Yes, there's been a lot of big plays, a lot of playmakers elevating to a higher level. But traditionally, the Coach of the Year award is a team that was struggling near the bottom that turns it around quickly. Not saying that should be the premise, but that's normally how the voting has gone in the past, which is why I think Zach Taylor will be the Coach of the Year this year.
I got to give a little bit of a counter argument. First, to LaFleur's point, do I think he deserves Coach of the Year this year or the last 2 years? Absolutely. He's had great seasons. He's been an amazing coach. I didn't expect much out of him, and he's done nothing but impress. So, yes, he does deserve it as well. I think my big counter argument to him is the fact that Aaron Rodgers is holding him down. I think Rodgers is such an elite quarterback that until he is able to lead a season without Aaron Rodgers there, I don't think he's going to win Coach of the Year because they're going to give all the credit to Rodgers. Same with when Brady was on the Patriots. It's like it was always the battle of, was it really Belichick or was it really Brady? And now that Brady's gone, do you give even an honorable mention to Bill Belichick at all? Nobody expected the Patriots to even make the playoffs this year. They took a rookie quarterback who wasn't even one of the top rookie quarterbacks ranked. Hello, Lucy. Thanks for making a appearance here on the podcast. Wasn't even one of the top rookie quarterbacks ranked, and they performed super well. And at one point, they were the number one seed in the NFL. They didn't finish as the number one seed, and they didn't even win their division, but they still made the playoffs, and they still look like a strong contender going into the playoffs. Do you give any love to Bill Belichick this year?
While I think he might be deserving of the award, I almost feel like his situation is similar to Matt LaFleur's situation. If you say he's like held down by Rodgers, I think Belichick's almost be held down by himself. Like, it's almost an expected. So like if he's not going out there and doing something that's like, oh my gosh, that's a shock. Like Cody says, like it almost always goes to a team, the coach of a team that wasn't expected to be good. Like when you're considering Belichick to be good and he goes out there and he's Belichick, you're almost like, oh, okay. There's no shock there. It's not expected. Like I almost think he's hurt by himself.
That's a great way to look at it. I think it was worth mentioning, but I think we're all in agreement that there's three potential candidates that are all deserving, and one of them will win. And our last award we do have to talk about is the prize, the holy grail of all NFL awards. That is most valuable player. And I'm just going to tell you, I don't really want it to be, because I believe it's been since Kurt Warner back with the Rams when a player has won the MVP and the Super Bowl in the same year. So I hope that somebody else wins the MVP so the Packers can win the Super Bowl. Like I don't need that curse on me, but I'm going to say Aaron Rodgers is the MVP. He is now the 6-time leader in touchdown to interception ratio in the NFL for a starting quarterback. He leads that 6 times. He finished with the highest passer rating. He was the most valuable player. You saw the team struggle when he missed the game with COVID. Now, whether you think he doesn't deserve it because of how he handled the COVID situation, how he handled this offseason, that's not really a debate in my opinion. The MVP should be decided by the play on the field. And yes, Tom Brady has more passing yards, but to me, the best quarterback this season was Aaron Rodgers.
Man,
Fair point. George, you got any counterpoints?
I hate myself. I hate myself.
Oh, you're gonna do it, aren't you?
I'm gonna do it. And I mean, it's funny because like the only reason I'm doing this is because I'm watching how the media is kind of like playing pawns these last few weeks. Like 3 weeks ago, if you asked, it was Aaron Rodgers was the clear leader in the MVP race, and then there was Jonathan Taylor in there. There was a couple whispers of Cooper Kupp. All of a sudden, now you're seeing NFL media start throwing whispers out there of Tom Brady. Like Tom Brady led the league in passing yards this year. You know what happened the last time he led the league in passing yards? He won MVP, and he's jumped up to second in MVP voting. Odds on betting apps. Like I honestly have this dumb feeling that people still have this grudge against Aaron Rodgers, and I agree with Cody. Like outside of football should not be involved in this MVP conversation. It also shouldn't be just a quarterback-centric award, but we seem to know it is. I have a really weird feeling that Tom Brady is going to go win this award, and I'm going to hate it.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Honestly, he, like you said, he is the number 2 favorite. Looking at the betting odds right now, Aaron Rodgers has a minus 400 odds to win MVP. Brady's at plus 400. So he's really not that far behind. But I'm going to go with the guy that's number 3 because I'm hot takes guy, and that's what I do. Look, I think Aaron Rodgers. Well, let me start off by saying MVP is an award that should go to the most valuable player. That's what the whole point of the award is. Now, I know it's a quarterback award, so it almost always goes to a quarterback, but it should go to the guy who single-handedly helped carry his team, or the guy who made such an impact that he really was the most valuable. You take that guy out of the conversation, and this team tanks. And I will agree, Aaron Rodgers missed a week, and they look bad. Jordan Love was not able to carry. So he definitely deserves consideration. He had an amazing season. Same thing with Brady. You take him out of the conversation and they don't look great. But Aaron Rodgers has Davante Adams. Aaron Rodgers has Aaron Jones. He has A.J. Dillon. I think if you talk about Tom Brady, he had Chris Godwin. He has Mike Evans. He has Gronkowski. I'm not saying that these people should negate their MVP award, But there's one dude that I think you take him off the team and they might not even make the playoffs. And I know it sounds crazy when you think about this team, but I'm going with Cooper Kupp. First time ever a wide receiver would win the award, but that's the guy I got to go with. He's the reason I didn't put him in Offensive Player of the Year, because usually Offensive Player of the Year and MVP don't go to the same person. So that's why I kept him out and gave it to Debo. But listen, Cooper Kupp won the Triple Crown. He had all three wide receiver categories he led. And normally, when a wide receiver is this elite, you got to look at the quarterback and give that quarterback the award. So does Matt Stafford get looks? No. Because if you look at Matt Stafford, when he threw to anybody but Cooper Kupp, yeah, Odell had a good season. Yeah, Robert Woods had a good season before he went down, but they weren't great. Matt Stafford is throwing picks left and right when he targets somebody other than Cooper Kupp, but there's something about what Kupp did this season, especially coming from a guy that nobody expected. People expect Aaron Rodgers to be good. People expect Tom Brady to be good. People think that Cooper Kupp is good. No one thinks he's elite, and that what he did this year was absolutely elite. It's something that you don't see from a wide receiver almost ever. The last time a wide receiver won the Triple Crown was 2005. Please tell me something that Rodgers and Brady did this year that hasn't been seen in years. Like, this is something they do every year. Every year they're great. Every year they put up big numbers. So Cooper Kupp doing something that the rest of the league hasn't done in years. I think he deserves it more than anybody else, especially because Matt Stafford really didn't look all that impressive outside of Kupp.
I mean, you make an argument, and I mean, I hope someone else other than a quarterback wins. So I'm with you on that boat. I just don't personally see it happening because I hate the way that these awards are portrayed and the way these awards are voted for.
Yeah, I agree. I think you make a solid argument. I'm not going to disagree with that. But I do think, and this is where value is up for interpretation, how much more valuable was Cooper Kupp compared to another slot receiver? Not saying that Cooper Kupp isn't special. Like, I'm not trying to discredit him, but if you compare a quarterback to the running back, or a quarterback to the backup, there was a big drop off in Aaron Rodgers' case. I mean, Tom Brady, he just led the league in passing yards. I really don't understand why he is even in the conversation, other than the passing yards. I would give a guy like Joe Burrow over him for the way he played down the stretch, carrying his team. You know, he's up there in passing yards as well. I think that's my only concern with Cooper Kupp is, you know, if OBJ played the whole season in his role, he probably doesn't have the same numbers, but how far off are they? You know, that's my only thought, because they put a huge feature on him. But again, that's why I have him as offensive rookie and you have him as MVP. But guys, that definitely wraps up the NFL awards. But I think the big thing is it is wild card weekend. So why don't we preview the games quick?
Absolutely. You know, I'll go ahead and take up the first matchup. And honestly, this is all personal opinion, but I think this is the most exciting matchup. And it's the Raiders versus the Bengals. It's two teams that nobody expected to make the playoffs facing off against each other in the first round. It's two teams that have just been electric as of late. And I think the Raiders are going to be running off a big high from their win over the Chargers. I think that was such a huge game. They're going to be rolling with that momentum. And I think the Bengals are probably one of the most underrated teams in the playoffs. I would even say that the Bengals are a potential Super Bowl winning team. As crazy as that may sound, they have the pieces to do it if they can get it all rolling together. So I think it's the most exciting game. I got to lean towards the Bengals here, but I think it's going to be a close one, guys. I think it'll be come down to the very end.
Dude, I'm with you. I'm all on the Bengals hype train. I was going to say maybe I'll take a stab at a hot take, but you stole the thunder. I think the Cincinnati Bengals can beat anybody in this playoffs. Now, will they? They're inexperienced. They haven't won a playoff game since before text messaging was invented. So no one has ever sent the text, the Bengals just won a playoff game. That's never been sent because they've never done it since. I think this is the year. I think the Raiders, they played almost 5 quarters, essentially did, on Sunday night. Now they have the earliest playoff game. They have to come east, 2 time zones. I think it'll be a lot for them to overcome, and I like the Bengals to win this one.
Honestly, I think if the Bengals had any other matchup in this playoffs, I was going to say that they lose. Not because of their talent, because I agree with you guys, they could beat any playoff team in this playoffs, but because I'm almost feeling vibes of them like the Bills from 2 years ago. The Bills struggled in their first appearance in the playoffs, but you knew something special was like building in Buffalo. And like Cincinnati next year might be a powerhouse of a team because they're starting to come together. But because of the fact that the Raiders played a Sunday night for 5 quarters, and the Raiders are, I think, in my opinion, the least impressive playoff team, I'm going to lean Bengals, but I don't know if I see them getting much further just because of their youth and inexperience.
I like Cody's shocked
Wow.
face because I know where he's going to go.
Least impressive team? There's a team playing on Sunday Night Football that's least impressive compared to the Oakland Raiders.
Well, you're
or
right.
Las Vegas Raiders.
You're right.
But
You're right.
I think this will be a fun one. The Bengals' weakness definitely is offensive line still. So if Max Crosby and those guys can get after them like they were able to get after Justin Herbert, they definitely have a chance. But I like the Bengals. But George, you mentioned the Buffalo Bills. They get for the third time the New England Patriots. They're at home. While I'm going to throw it to somebody else, I'm going to look up the weather and see if we're going to see another 38 runs by the New England Patriots. But I don't believe that's supposed to be the case, and I think the Bills are still the better team and get the victory this week as well.
Yeah,
Tyler,
I mean,
you go first, because if the weather's going to be a factor, it might change my pick, but I think I'm pretty solid otherwise.
the weather is supposed to be a factor, but despite that, I'm still. I think Devin Singletary has emerged enough that they at least have a little bit of a running game. I still don't think he's an amazing running back, but at least they have somewhat of a running game now. I still think the Bills are the better team, and I think they've played the snow one time enough to kind of learn some tricks and figure out how to move the ball. If it is a snow game, I know the Patriots won last time because they had the more dominant run game, and it came down to that. But the issue was if it came down to like they needed to pass to win, I don't think Mac Jones had it. And where Josh Allen will find some way to win. And that's why I got to give the edge to the Bills this time. For anybody out there that is a bettor, if you have the DraftKings app, not a sponsor, but they can be, DraftKings Sportsbook has a hammer the over bet this week for the Patriots and Bills game. Every 5,000 bettors that bet on the over, it lowers the over. Right now, I believe it's at like 32 points. It would need to be over, but everybody that keeps betting hammers it even lower. We could even get this down to 0 points, 1 point scored in the game, and you win your bet. So go on DraftKings if you have it, hammer that over, and let's make everybody a winner this week. But yeah, I'm going with the Bills in this matchup, guys.
One, that was so smooth. You really should be a spokesperson for DraftKings. Two, I never thought of it this way, but maybe that last game against the Patriots and Bills that was in the weather and the Patriots literally ran the ball 38 times is what made the Bills start to finally formulate a run game, because Devin Singletary has been better in recent weeks. You're right there. And they just did not seem to care about running the ball up until that point. I mean, I think it was the wild card game last year that the Bills only ran the ball one time in the whole first half. So okay, that gives me more confidence to be able to put my money on the Bills regardless of the weather. I think the Patriots definitely get a boost if it is a bad weather game, but the Bills should find a way to win.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the weather is only supposed to be cold, and the wind is not supposed to be as bad as of recording this on Wednesday night heading into Thursday. So cold is one thing, no wind. I like the Bills in this one. So moving to the Sunday matchups, the first game to kick it off the Sunday games is Georgia's Eagles versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers do get playoff Lenny back potentially and linebacker Levante David. They were designated return off IR. If they can play this week, that is a huge boost. Not as much as playoff Lenny, but Levante David against the Eagles' run defense would be a huge boost for them. I know Brady has struggled against the Eagles in the Super Bowl. He struggled against the NFC in the East in the Super Bowl. I want to pick the Eagles. I really do want to pick the upset, but I just cannot pick against Tom Brady in the first round. I feel like it'll be very similar to last year where Washington came out and smacked him in the face, but at the end of the day, Brady took him down and scored a touchdown to win the game. That's where I'm with this one. George, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine, because I mean, while I am an optimistic Eagles fan that thinks that we do have a shot in this game and a lot of other people don't, if you're a bettor, maybe don't bet the money line on the Eagles, but bet them plus 8.5, because I think Cody's prediction is not bad. the fact that the Eagles could surprise them a little bit, keep it close. Maybe Brady wins on the game-winning drive at the end, which would be under 8.5 points. The Eagles could cover. While you said playoff Lenny wasn't a big deal, I think that is a big deal because I'm pretty sure Ronald Jones is going to be out for this game. If they're down to a third-string running back, while they are deep at the running back room, playoff Lenny would be a big boost against a solid Eagles front seven, as opposed to going all the way down the depth chart in the running back room.
George, let me ask you one quick question about this matchup, and that'll make my decision for me. Obviously, I was leaning towards the Bucs, but there's always room for upsets, and if 2021 has taught me anything, it's that upsets are not that uncommon this year. So there is always that chance. But I know that the Eagles have established a pretty good run game in the second half of the season now that they finally know how to run the ball. I know that Jalen Hurts with his legs are very dangerous. And he can definitely create a lot of space. And I also know that Devontae Smith has had a great season. However, if there's about a minute 20 left in the game, the Eagles need a 60-yard drive to get a touchdown, and they have to win with Jalen Hurts' arm. How confident do you feel?
George is like, put in Gardner.
On a on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to go right down the middle on a 5, because the one person who didn't mention that, who I think would be the most important piece in a drive like that, is Dallas Goedert. He's coming back off the COVID list. He is healthy. He had some injuries earlier in the season, missed a couple of games here and there. I think while Devontae Smith is going to be big in a drive like that, they have a big play threat in Quez Watkins, who is starting to, crank it together. He actually had a big touchdown against Dallas that no one cared about because it was in garbage time, but I think Dallas Goedert's the guy who would lead a drive like that. And Jalen Hurts has shown the ability to have some good drives with his arm on occasion. The only reason I'm at a 5 is because inconsistency is still there. This is a better team when they have a lead or close in the game and don't have to abandon the run. But I think it's within the realm of possibilities that they could do it.
That's my prediction, guys. I think it's going to come down to the Eagles are down a score with a little over a minute left in the game, and they have to throw the ball to win the game. I'm saying that's what it's going to come down to. I think it's going to be that close. So we will have to see how it goes. We'll have to see if Jalen Hurts has what it takes. But let's go ahead and move on to the next game. Let's keep it rolling. We got the other team in that division. The division winner, the Cowboys, and they are going to be hosting the 49ers, who had a miracle comeback to make the playoffs in general. I think the 49ers are definitely one of the more underrated teams in the playoffs because of the fact that they just squeaked in. But honestly, the 49ers have so many weapons. I think that Jimmy G has performed really well, and even if he doesn't play, we've seen enough out of Trey Lance that they can still move the ball. But I think Garoppolo's kind of on. He's got a rhythm right now. I think that George Kittle is playing probably his best football he's ever played. I think Deebo Samuel is on another level. Ayuk is finally starting to get it together, and that defense is making things happen. 49ers are one of the more underrated teams, and the Cowboys, in my opinion, have fallen off a little bit. They were a strong team all season long, but in recent weeks, they just really haven't seemed as impressive. I don't think there's going to be a lot of upsets in Wildcard weekend, but I think this is one of them for me. I personally am going 49ers over the Cowboys.
Yeah, this is one that as soon as I was like, the 49ers are going to win this game. But I feel like this is the game that everybody's picking the upset. I feel like everybody is on, maybe the bettors are still on the Cowboys, but I feel like everyone I talk to is like, oh, the 49ers are going to win this game. And I feel like we're going to talk ourselves into it just for Dallas to win the game. So I'm actually going to pivot and like talk myself out of the upset that I think that's going to happen, like whatever weird mind trick that is, and say the Cowboys are going to win this one. I do want to give a quick shout out because we didn't talk about it in the awards, but both Dak Prescott and Nick Bosa are in consideration for comeback player of the year. We did not talk about that award, but Nick Bosa has been playing well. They got that defense rolling. This should be a lot of fun, and it's worth noting that this is the Nickelodeon game. So seeing some googly eyes on Mike McCarthy, watching Deebo Samuel jump into some virtual slime as he runs into the end zone, should be a lot of fun.
Cody makes a great point on how this is what you would consider as the obvious upset. But I still think I'm going to pick the upset because really the teams that the Cowboys have beaten in the second half were those trash NFC East teams and the Eagles backups. But when they played an actual playoff team, they played the Cardinals a few weeks back. They got beat. I'll say they were competitive in that game. That game was close, but they have not been the same team that they were in the first half of the season. In the first half of the season, they looked like they were unstoppable and going to win the Super Bowl tomorrow. But that has not been the case. So give me the 49ers because also I think they have a little bit of magic going. We thought they were out of that game last week, and Jimmy Garoppolo led a miracle drive, and then they won in overtime. So 49ers, I think, are one of those hot teams that is better than their seeding in the playoffs. And honestly, this could be another one of those games that comes down to a final drive. I think it's going to be a final drive with the 49ers maybe down 3 points, and they make it happen. So that's where I'll go.
All right, that's already more Cowboys than I ever like to talk. Let's go ahead and move on to the next matchup. Talk about the obvious game. I think this might be the most one-sided betting of the entire week, maybe the entire playoffs, as crazy as that may sound. But it's the Chiefs and the Steelers. The Chiefs are obviously hosting the number 2 seed. They missed out on getting that number 1 seed because of a Week 17 loss, but they are still a strong team. They've been one of the hottest teams in the second half of the year. And the Steelers just painfully average. Like, they have moments where they can look pretty good, but they're not a team that anybody wants to heavily rely on in these playoffs. I haven't heard a single person say that they think the Steelers can win the Super Bowl. I know that we're riding on the high of it's Big Ben's last season and, let's try to go get him some playoff wins. But I think the fact that he even made it to the playoffs is enough of a retirement fund enough. I think he's going to lose this game. I don't see any way the Steelers win this game. It might be more competitive than I'm saying. I don't think it's going to be like a 30-point blowout, but I don't see any way the Steelers win this game personally.
My biggest question is not who's going to win this game. It's why did Patrick Mahomes carry this game enough to get it Sunday night on Wildcard weekend? If this was the 1:00 game on Sunday, I could see it. Like, it's got to be the fact that Patrick Mahomes is back in the playoffs that they put this on Sunday night. There's no other reason in my mind.
Big Ben's final game, I think, is the reason it's Sunday night.
Big Ben and as much as
shows how much you care about Big Ben.
But as much as you hate the Steelers, there are an audience. They're one of the best traveling teams. They know they'll watch the eyes. I mean, if you put, I still can't believe that the 49ers Cowboys game isn't here. CBS must have worked their magic to make sure that game was guaranteed for Nickelodeon. But because I thought this game was destined for, or that game was destined for Sunday night. I'm trying to remember. I do think this game is probably the game that's going to be the upset because no one's talking about it. But I still think the Chiefs are going to win by 30. I know the Steelers defense is a lot better, and I'm probably doing them dirty talking about giving up 30 points. But didn't they play earlier this year, and wasn't it a blowout essentially? Like was it Derek Gore game? I believe it was. Had the big game. Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill. So it's just I can't see it that the Chiefs, they're another team I think is destined. It was 36-10 earlier this year. So 26-point victory. So a 30-point victory isn't that uncommon. So give me the Chiefs in that one. And I definitely think that's enough to talk about. Unless anyone wants to talk more about a potential upset that we don't see coming, we can move on to the final game of the week on Monday night. So make sure you set your alarm clocks that Monday Night Football is back after this one. It is the third matchup of the season between the Cardinals and the Rams. The Rams fell apart against the San Francisco 49ers. The Cardinals they came back and beat the Seahawks, right? I know that game was back and forth. No, the Seahawks beat them.
Seahawks beat them.
That's right. The Seahawks, because Rashad Penny went off again. He had that 60-yard run at the end of the game. But two teams coming off of a loss, two teams we had high expectations have struggled down the stretch. The Rams signed Eric Weddle to replace Jordan Fuller, the dude that retired 2 years ago and hasn't played. I don't understand what that's about. That's
37.
Yeah. I think that was a big reason that the 49ers came back and they went out and got a guy, which I love. They're like, well, he knows the defense. Staley was the coordinator last year. It's a new guy this year. It wasn't the same guy. It wasn't the same guy then. It doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. Which is why I think this is going to be a fun, exciting game. Could be potentially high scoring, but I am going to pick, I guess it's a 4-5 matchup. So I will pick the upset. I do think the Cardinals go into LA, get the victory. get back on track. I like the Cardinals in this matchup.
I feel like I can't really pivot from my stance from last week when I was talking about how my favorite first round opponent for the Eagles was the Cardinals because they're not the same team right now. Them losing to the Seahawks kind of reinforces that in my mind. The Rams lost to the 49ers, I get it, but the 49ers are a playoff team. While I don't think the Rams are going to go all the way to the Super Bowl, I think Cooper Kupp can lead them to at least one win, and that's why I'm going to lean with the Rams in this matchup.
I think that the NFL picks their favorites in the beginning of the season. Like, this is more of a conspiracy theory than anything, but I think the NFL picks their favorite teams in the beginning of the season, and the media hypes on them more than anybody else, and they really try to force this team through, and some kind of BS is going to happen to make them win. And this year, the Rams are that team. Matt Stafford is the guy that the media hype train is all over. So I feel like the NFL is going to find a way to force the Rams forward. But I really think the Rams still have, some hiccups, some things that they need to fix before they become that Super Bowl winning team. And I want this win so badly for the Cardinals. After watching them murder my Titans in week 1 and watching them start the season so hot, talk about a team that took over the number 1 seed for most of the season and nobody cared. They were the number 1 seed in the NFC, and people were like, man, Rodgers and the Packers, man, Brady and the Bucks.
That's because we took it from them.
But like the Cardinals were still up the top, like for most of the season, and no one cared. And now, ever since they've had some injuries and they had to try to fight through them, they still fought through it real hard. People just don't care about the Cardinals. They just already wrote them off. And I think that the Cardinals are still a strong team. And anytime I see an underdog team getting written off, I like rooting for them. And this year, in the NFC, that's the Cardinals for me. And I really hope that they pull this victory off and go right back into that media attention and prove that they are a strong team. Especially because I also really like Kyler Murray. I think he's one of the more humble, great quarterbacks in the league. A lot of the great quarterbacks are really starting to get their head huge, and I don't think Kyler Murray's there yet. So I really like the kid. I'm rooting for him. Go Cardinals in this matchup.
That is 2 picks for the upset there. So I know we're talking about there's always that upset somewhere. While maybe that's not the upset, it is by seeding. So maybe that's the game we have to target. And especially if there's no big upset coming into Monday Night Football, watch out if you're a Rams fan. Watch out if you're rooting for the Cardinals there. That could be a very good game. But we're getting a little long here, and we have one more segment to go. Why don't we jump into some NFL Playoff Challenge?
So for anybody wondering what the NFL Playoff Challenge is, let me explain. It's a fun thing that's run through NFL.com that anybody can join completely for free. Basically, what you do is you pick a quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, 1 tight end, a kicker, and a defense. You can pick it from any team that is in the playoffs. And just like normal fantasy, you gain points based off of how they do in the game. Now, here's a little caveat with it. If you pick a player in week 1 and their team advances to week 2, you get double points for week 2 for that player. If they advance to week 3, you get triple points. If they advance to the Super Bowl, you get quadruple points. You get extra bonus points based off of how long you've had them on your team. And if you pick somebody who gets eliminated from the playoffs, you got to replace that guy the next week. You can join groups and just try to be the best team in your group. So it's big bonus points if you can pick who you think is going to be the Super Bowl matchup in week 1. Another little fun thing to note in this before we start is you can pick any Titans or Packers players in week 1. Now you may be thinking, why would I do that? They're not playing. They're going to get me 0. That'd be stupid. It might seem stupid, but it's really not, because you are guaranteeing that player is going to move on to next week. So now you have a player next week guaranteed double points, and that'll make up for any points that they missed in week 1. So it is not a bad idea to pick Titans or Packers players if you think that they are going to go far. So I think I explained it enough, guys. Why don't we go ahead and jump on in? So the way we're going to do it,
I'll help us pick some numbers here, actually. Yeah.
Yes, we're going to do this draft style, guys. So each one of us are going to pick any position that we'd like when it is our turn, and we're going to draft a player for that spot until we have a full lineup. So go ahead, George.
Okay, so I have a random number generator on here from 1 to 3. Cody, you haven't been talking for a while, so you pick a number between 1 and 3.
3.
Wrong. Tyler.
I got to go with my boy Derrick Henry, number 2.
2 is correct. You're the first pick. Cody, you get the second pick. I'll get the third.
Man,
So go
first
ahead,
pick.
Tyler.
That's a lot of pressure. Now, I can pick any position, any player here. It's if you could pick somebody who plays in Wildcard weekend who makes it all the way to the Super Bowl, that is going to be huge because you get the points for this week plus the double points next week. And I think the key here is picking somebody who will make the Super Bowl. I think I'm going to go with a guy who is going to get 0 in week 1. I'm picking somebody from a bye team. That is absolutely right. So I'm sure you know exactly where I'm going. I'm going with the Packers. I'm going with Devontae Adams as our wide receiver 1. That is my first pick in this. I think Devontae Adams with double points starting next week, and I think the Packers are going to make the Super Bowl. I think it's an easy pick. Give me Adams.
Why did I have the first pick? Because that's the guy I wanted. I think what I'm hoping that you said Super Bowl. I'm not going to say it because I can't jinx it, but I love where your head's thinking going with that one. I am going to go with a guy. You know, this might be. I'm going to cop out, I guess, a little bit because I'm going to take a tight end, and I'm going to take a tight end that's at least going to get to the AFC Championship game. In my opinion, I think it's going to be a close game between some good teams, has Super Bowl potential, but is the number 1 tight end, probably the tight end everyone's going to take. So some people, and you do this league, don't take the guy I'm about to take because everyone in the league is going to take him. But I am going to take Travis Kelce as the tight end for us. Again, that's 2 zeros now we're going into this playoff challenge with in week 1. So we're expecting a lot out of these guys as the playoffs go further.
No, the Chiefs do not have a first round bye. That would be the Tennessee Titans, right. My boy.
I'm sorry.
Travis Kelce
I
does
still
play this week.
Forget that we have 7 teams and not 6. So, so Travis Kelce makes even more sense that he's playing in week 1.
Yeah. Yes, it does. So that means I'm up at third here, and I'm going to go quarterback. Now, I am tossing back and forth between Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers takes the 0, but I think Aaron Rodgers has a slightly better chance to make it to the Super Bowl than Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes will get his points this first week, and like Cody said, I think there's at least a guaranteed shot they go through the AFC Championship game. So I'll see if you guys do you guys want to lean me one direction before I make my pick? Because I think I know where I'm going to go unless you convince me.
No, this is your pick, man.
Yeah, your pick.
Okay,
I don't want to sway you.
I'm going to go Patrick Mahomes, mostly because of getting the points in the first round. There are a lot of strong contenders in the AFC. Like I said, there's definitely like some risk of him not making it to the Super Bowl, but I think there's also a good chance that those 3 weeks he does play, he's going to put up a lot of points. He has been much better in the second half than he was in the first half fantasy-wise, so I like the chance of getting triple points for him through there, and then if we have to fill a quarterback in the Super Bowl, I think we're still going to be doing okay.
Yeah, I would actually have talked you into Patrick Mahomes as well, just because it is Lambeau Field, it is the winter. This could become, a more running-focused team. Patrick Mahomes has more yards on the season already. They like to throw it a lot more, so I definitely like the Patrick Mahomes pick. He was one of the top guys at quarterback I was considering. But I think we're back to Tyler.
We are back to Tyler. I love that I have pretty much the whole board open except tight end and quarterback because I didn't want to go with those positions anyway. I thought they were too obvious, and you guys took the guys I would have taken. So I got a question for you guys. If there is a bull, and you put a bull in a cage, and you just keep poking him with the stick, and you keep taunting him, saying like, "Come on out! Oh, hey, come on out! Come at me!" Do you want to get in front of that guy? Do you want to get in front of that bull? No, that bull is going to run you over. He is going to murder you. Now, you give me double points with that bull who is just murdering people throughout the playoffs. Oh, yeah, all day. Juicy. So that bull to me is Derrick Henry. He has been sitting there. He has been waiting to come back. He's been hearing Jonathan Taylor for MVP. Shut up. I don't want to hear it. He's been hearing, the Titans are done without Derrick Henry. Shut up. Now we're going to the playoffs. He has a first-round bye. It was a 6 to 10 week injury. You give me 11 weeks. He is fully healthy. I've been watching the practice video. He looks strong. He looks fast. He looks like Derrick Henry. This dude is a late season player. He is a cold player. He is ready to absolutely feast. Give me Derrick Henry. I am excited to see what he's going to do in the playoffs.
Well, I will say I think we need to temper expectations. I would have took Derrick Henry as my next pick as well, so I don't want to but it is a risk taking him, knowing he's getting a 0. It'll be his first game action in 11 weeks in the divisional round. Will he only get half a workload? So you're really banking on those ×3 and ×4 weeks that he would have to get to.
To answer your question, keep in mind that Derrick Henry is a guy who's used to getting almost 40 carries a game. He plays every single snap. He plays the entire game. He gets every single carry. So half a workload for Derrick Henry in today's NFL is still a full workload for a lot of running backs. So I think that is worth noting. Are we going to say a normal running back's half a workload and he might only get 10 to 15 carries? Then yes, tamper expectations, but I still think he's going to get 20 plus carries. I think he's such a hungry player that it doesn't matter if he is a little rusty or if he's a little sore. He's going to force his way out onto that field, and he's going to be a scary guy to watch.
Yeah, I also think game flow will take if the Titans are up by a touchdown or 10 points in the fourth quarter, they might throw Foreman back out there. He's played great. So maybe we only going to get the 10 to 15 carries in the divisional round from Derrick Henry, but he'll probably still score. So that's 12 points right there. And again, running backs, I'm not touching the running back. I'm going to let George take the running back next. And I'm debating here on the wide receivers because I want to take Cooper Kupp, but I just told you he's going to lose in week 1 to the Cardinals. So I can't do it because I need those double points. Do we have too many Chiefs players? We probably do. But Tyreek Hill, if we're putting the other two in there, we're giving him triple points as well. Jamar Chase, the guy we talked about, potentially going to the Super Bowl. There is a lot of options here. If I was playing safe, and I'm probably going to pick him in my own league, I'm going to pick Tyreek Hill, but I'm not. I'm going full go. Give me Jamar Chase as the wide receiver. We're going to at least get double points. Hopefully he has week 17-esque games. And if we have to swap it out for someone later, we will. But give me Jamar Chase.
I think I would have went Mike Evans, but I don't hate the pick at all. I think I'm excited to see what he'll do in the playoffs.
Mike Evans was definitely in consideration there. As I was saying, Jamar Chase is I probably should have went Mike Evans. I was actually thinking that in my head. So I'm glad you said it. But let's have some fun. Jamar Chase.
And love to Stephon Diggs, too. We're not loving the Bills at all yet.
No. I'm about to debate how bold I want to go here. I can go with Cody and go Joe Mixon because he probably is one of the strongest.
George, before you pick, I just want you to know real quick, you do have the potential to also pick a defense. I have next pick. Fair. I could pick a kicker, and we could still force Cody to have to pick a running back after he was so happy to say no running backs. But feel free to pick a running back if you are ready.
See, I'm not ready. And I might just end up spewing out some names out here and then going with the defense anyway. But I'm just going to talk a bit because I want to see, I should know where I'm thinking here. So I could go with Cody and go Joe Mixon because he's probably one of the best fantasy running backs left. I would put him below Derrick Henry if Derrick Henry was 100% healthy, but we obviously, like we said, we don't know exactly how many carries we're going to get out of him in that first week. I could go with Aaron Jones because we know Aaron Jones is the lead back on a team that has a good chance to make it all the way to the Super Bowl, even though we're going to get a 0 out of him. The question is, there's some games where he's not quite as involved fantasy-wise as some of these other backs. And if the weather is going to be bad, we know they like to use A.J. Dillon. So it's a bit of a risk there as well. If we want to give love to the Bills because they have a good shot to go deep, we can talk about Devin Singletary. I am going to cop out and I'm going to go with the defense. I'm going to go with the Packers because I think the Packers have a chance to go
Packers?
deep. They're a fairly solid defense, and every single game is going to be played up in the frozen tundra. So I'm going to hope that the weather holds some points down and helps the Packers defense, and they go to the Super Bowl. I'm doing it mostly because of hoping for ×4 points and hoping for bad weather.
The Packers defense.
Yes.
Of all the defenses.
Yep.
You have literally the top 3 fantasy scoring defenses in the playoffs. And you still went the Packers.
Yep.
That's a bold strategy, Cotton, right there.
I'm sorry. I love it. I didn't know where I would have went with defenses. I was leaning Bucks mainly because I don't trust the Eagles.
Mhm.
I think the Bucks are one of the more sure shots to move on, and I love the Bucks defense, especially in the playoffs. I think they're going to play their best football. But I'm not. It wasn't my pick, so I don't care. I could easily go the cop out and go with the kicker here, just to make Cody have to pick a running back because it is such a sketchy category. Or I could just man up and pick a running back. But how much of a man really am I? Let's see.
My
I
I'm
think
sitting perfect.
just-
Not me.
yeah, you got Evan McPherson just like lined up for you. But just to give you guys a little bit of insight, since we do have one more running back to pick, 43% of users so far have picked Aaron Jones. 42% have picked Joe Mixon. We got 21% on Derrick Henry, 16 on Zeke, and 13 on Devin Singletary. That is your top 5 running backs. So it makes a lot of sense to pick one of those guys. But man, I am that hot takes guy. I kind of want to go somewhere else. And
Do it.
I
I'm
think
not
going
picking
to.
any of those running backs, so one of us is doing it.
Dude, I'm gonna go with somebody completely different. If I am stupid, sue me. Especially
Hang
because
on.
you have to.
I'm going to write down who I was going to pick.
Same.
You can keep talking.
All right, sorry. You do have to. I mean, you got Elijah Mitchell still. You got Najee Harris, AJ Dillon, Damian Harris. Even if you think the Patriots can go, all of these are great options. You have to tamper your expectations for the guy that I'm going to pick, and it's probably a really stupid pick, but he is called Playoff Lenny for a reason, and he is supposed to return against the Eagles. I am going Leonard Fournette. Give me 2 IR running backs returning from injured reserve in the playoffs for my 2 running backs. I like Playoff Lenny a lot. I think the Bucks passing game is a little hampered right now. With Godwin out, Evans is playing through an injury, and every other receiver they have is injured. So I'm going to say they have to lean on the running game and give me Playoff Lenny. I'm excited for it. I want to be different.
I was not going with him either.
I guessed
Well,
it.
to be fair,
what'd you guess?
before Cody goes, we do have to be aware because he does have a hamstring injury. He is supposed to come back off of IR. If he is not activated, we are going to need to pick another running back. So that other running back we will pick. Cody, go ahead.
Because we're getting those double points in week 2. You picked him. He's in our lineup.
No, well, he might not. If he doesn't play this week, we're going to need a different running back.
Nah, we're going to leave him in there for double points when he beats the Eagles.
All right.
No switching.
All right.
You made the pick.
Who's the guy you would have picked then, Cody?
I would
Damian
have
Harris?
picked my hot take is even hotter. I would have picked
Let me
Darrell
scroll
Williams.
down a bit. Oh. Okay.
Darrell Williams with the Kansas City Chiefs. That would be the guy. I'm picking him in. We're doing this as the consensus. Each of us will have our own team. Darrell Williams will be my RB2 in that league. But in this league, we only have the kicker left. And I know the boy saved him for me. It might not be the best pick. It might be the worst pick. But there's nowhere else I can go than give me Evan Money McPherson, George's favorite kicker, literally won me a championship game. Got me into the playoffs, won me a championship game. Evan McPherson versus the Raiders. Back-to-back Bengals. I told you they could beat anybody. Our lineup is set. Bengals, I don't even know who they're going to play in the second week, but give me all the Bengals. Dude, 1 o'clock's going to suck when they lose on Saturday.
We'll be back next week to fill in all of our holes when the Bengals lose.
Yes, we will fill our holes as the playoffs goes on. We're going to do our consensus along with you guys, just like we're going to do our own leagues. But guys, obviously, this is going to be a lot more fun if more people join. If you're listening out there, you think these are dumb picks? Cool. This is your time to really prove that you are smarter than us. Go ahead, pick your own lineup, compete along with us, join our group so we can see that, like, oh, wow, this guy's doing really good. Go ahead, compete against us. You'll compete against all of us individually, as well as our Couch GMs group team that you're hearing live. And if you beat us all, hey, we might invite you on the podcast so you can talk some trash, and we'll have nothing we can say back because you won. So go ahead, make your team, join the Couch GMs podcast group. We will also share a link in our description, as well as on our social media and on our website, thecouchgms.com. So go out, make your playoff challenge, guys. You don't have much time left because Saturday is our first game. I'm excited, guys.
Absolutely. And as always, if you made it this far, thank you for listening. I know it was a long one, but honestly, we've been doing this all season. I think this was my favorite episode we've recorded to date. This was a ton of fun. So as always, thanks for listening.
And I feel like we're gonna have a lot of very full episodes as we go back down to the one episode a week format. But yes, it was a fun one. Make sure you're joining us on Playoff Challenge and following us on social media. Thank you one more time for listening into the Couch GMs podcast. For Tyler Snyder and Cody Roadcap, I'm George Kerth, and we'll see you all next week.